Hello students, we continue with 14.1, demand for a factor input when only one input is variable. So let's say you have two factors, K fixed and labor is your variable input. Okay, so the condition is MRP equals to MR times MPL. That means how much your output, how much is the output that labor can bring times the revenue that output can bring. Okay, and the equilibrium condition is that MRP must equals to the wage, which is the marginal cost of adding an additional labor. Okay, so you can equate that MR MPL equals to W, MR equals to W over MPL. So this is the additional cost for each unit of labor, and MR will be this is the additional cost for each unit of output brought by the labor, and this is the marginal revenue over the output. Okay, so this is how you get this formula. Now this next slide shows what happens if you have two variables. K is also variable, L is also variable. Okay, and in this first example we look at first example where you start with wage equals to 22, wage equals to 20, and you with the supply curve, with the supply curve, the equilibrium is at A. Okay, but when wage declines to 15, then you will see that now the M, you start with an equilibrium, right? But if wage falls, then MRPL and wage will become smaller. And when wage becomes smaller, the decision will be to hire more. Yeah, so you take more labor because you're paying the additional cost is cheaper than the additional revenue created by that decision to add labor. Okay, and when you have more labor working, you need to add more capital. And since capital is variable, so you will see that capital will also be added, such that MP for K increases as well. Yeah, marginal output for labor for capital increase, and therefore the MRP for K now, when compared to rental, it is larger. So we keep on hiring more capital now. Okay, but with more labor working with more capital, the result is that MRP will shift to the, we're talking about labor only here in this graph. We don't show the MRPK. MRPL will shift to the right because now it is able to produce more. Okay, but when it shifts to the right, the equilibrium will be at C. Okay, because it's no longer on the same you're not just trying to stabilize the situation again, but now you have an entirely new MRP curve, and that will create the equilibrium at C. Now if this happens, you have two different equilibrium points. Connect the 2 points, you will get, connect this point and this point, it will create for you the demand for labor. Okay, B is not demand for labor, because it was not supposed to be, it did not stop at MRP L1. It should move to MRP L2 because of this process. This process that we mentioned just now, the cycle. MRP creates more labor, and then more labor creates more capital, and therefore you have even more MRP labor shifting to the right. Okay, so this process creates a shift, and it will stop at C, and therefore to connect A and C, that connection will create the demand curve. Okay, the next section is on market demand curve. If there is only one producer of output, then it's easy. The MRP is for the firm is the same as the MRP for the industry, or in other words, demand for firm is the same as the demand for factor for the industry. Okay, but let's look at the case where there are many producers and they are all in a perfectly competitive market. So what happens? Let's take A. I will show you what happens to A. When wage falls from 15 to 10, okay, the product price will fall, and it's easy to look at this way. If wage falls, then you'll hire more labor. Okay, then output will increase, and supply of output will shift right. So imagine if supply and demand, supply shift right means what? Price will fall. Okay, and when price fall, remember this is the derived demand. When price fall, MRP will shift. Then we have MRP L will shift left. Okay, because you buy less labor, the marginal revenue brought by the labor is less, so MRP will shift to the left. So now you can see MRP1 shifting to MRP2. Okay, in other words, we are saying that since MRP is demand, so demand of labor falls, shift to the left. And if there's any equilibrium, the equilibrium will happen at a lower point, lower MRP. Okay, so that's why you see on the right, if the dark green line here, this dark green line shows that the connected points of equilibrium will give you a very steep demand curve, because you are connecting between equilibrium that is on the lower side. Okay, that will be the industry demand curve if price falls, like this case just now. Okay, but if price is unchanged for some reason, then your two connected points will be on a higher place, and this is the demand curve for the industry if price is unchanged. Okay, this one is demand curve for the industry if price can fall, okay, or can change. So please read this again. Okay, the next section is supply of inputs to a firm. The model here is that the factor market is perfect competition. Yeah. So Remember the case I quoted just now about graduates coming out of the university at the same time, everyone graduating in the graduation season looking for work. So you could have a relatively perfectly inelastic supply curve there. Okay, so there is, let's look at the graph for you. So you are, as the firm, this is a firm buying fabric. In the case or the story here is fabric. Fabric is input to make clothes. So firm buying fabric, they become the supply, not demand. The supply is elastic because fabric is cheap, is in a PC market. Therefore, the supply for fabric is the PC. This is the PC market. So the supply is constant and horizontal. Okay, so equilibrium will happen where supply equals to demand. Sorry, it's fabric now. We're not talking about labor. All right, fabric. Now, why do we say we use the term marginal expenditure? If you recall from chapter 10, marginal expenditure and average expenditure, when you have a price taker, M always equals to A. Yeah? But you know that expenditure means how much the firm is willing to spend, how much the firm is getting, is spending on factors. Okay, which is based on the price that the factors are being offered at. So that's the meaning of marginal expenditure and aggregate expenditure. Demand, you already seen why it's called MRP. So average expenditure curve, supply curve representing the price per unit that firm pays for a good. The good here is input. Marginal expenditure is the additional cost of purchasing one additional unit of a good. Okay, and you only get this ME equals to AE if it is PC. If it is monopolistic competition, we know it's something different. Okay, so what's the equilibrium here? ME equals to MRP. Yeah, you can take either one. So ME equals to MRP. And since MRP must always equals to W, so must always equals to W, so ME is also equals to W. In other words, we are saying that condition for profit maximization is the price of input to be equal to marginal expenditure.